Recently, I had the opportunity to sit down and chat with Annapurna Sriram. She's known for her past roles in I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson, Dom, Billions, and Jesse Eisenberg's play The Spoils. We spoke about her upcoming film Fucktoys, which follows a young woman on a mission to make $1,000 in order to break a curse, navigating her way through the strange people and places of Trashtown, USA. Let me start.
Go off, King.
The first thing to start off with is if you could explain in your own words what Fucktoys really is and where the idea came from in the first place.
So Fucktoys is a movie, and it's an homage to the movies that I grew up with, and different, I would say, different decades or genres of cinema that I don't think is really happening anymore in American cinema, I would say. Thinking about new wave, grindhouse, B movies, camp, and, kind of American art house. I really wanted to create something that had a lot of aesthetic, like movies I grew up with, like Jubilee or Liquid Sky or Pee-wee's Big Adventure, but also marry it to a grounded story, I guess, with characters that the audience can care about. Where the story came from for the movie actually came 8 years ago. I was really sick and I spoke with a psychic, and basically she told me I had to dump my boyfriend. She was like, your boyfriend's the reason you're sick. So if you dump him, like, that's how you'll get better. And also she was like, I don't know. I was like, really, it's not just like honey and turmeric or something to like get rid of my cold. So she said if I didn't break up with my boyfriend, I wouldn't have the career that I was supposed to have. And then I immediately dumped him, like got off the call with her and then called him, was like, okay, we have to break up. And then after that conversation, I felt psychotic. I was like, who breaks up with their boyfriend because of a psychic, a numerologist that I just spoke to on the phone with? Like, I didn't even see her in person. It was like a phone call session. And he was like kind of over. I think at that point he was like, no, I think it's over. I think there were other reasons that like the relationship was over, but I was really fascinated by my decision making. And, I really prided myself on being a rational actor and, someone who's not religious or, buying into these types of things. And I was like, wow, she really told me to do it. And I just went and did it. And like, that's really funny. Who does that? And there's like a sort of absurdism and a comedy to that dynamic of a person is told something by a psychic and they just believe it. And so that was sort of the like seed that I started with. And then, I was going through this breakup, so I was heartbroken, and I started just writing down scenes from my life and from other psychics that I would talk to, and sort of these imagined moments. But a lot of like the core scenes, or like some of the most incredible dialogue, I should say, are actually just things that people have said to me, or situations that I was in. And so I found a way to weave these vignettes together into this movie, and that's how Fucktoys came to be.
Well, I didn't realize the boyfriend thing in the psychic, but you can tell it's such a personal film as well. As absurd as it is as a narrative, it still has this weird style of being like grounded to some extent.
Everything I write is actually deeply personal, like things down to like how the dog dies is how my childhood dog, like the pictures of the dog, that's like, there are all these like deeply personal little seeds. But I always felt like just telling my story is kind of boring. And also the way it will just look really boring because it's just like a sad girl in New York City, so it's like I wanted to frame everything in something more magical and heightened and cinematic so that it could also kind of live forever, that you wouldn't watch the movie and just think, oh, this is a movie from 2019. Like it would feel like, oh, this is kind of a timeless time capsule of, I don't know, like classic American cinema, and wanting it to sort of live beyond sort of the mundane of my day-to-day life. But that's like a pattern in my writing where I like to take something and then just like the seeds of the bones of the scene are all real, but then I just frame it in a completely different context so it can be more interesting.
It definitely works.
Like no shade to mumblecore. I just was like, I don't want this to be mumblecore.
Now that the film is like getting out there and it's screened at festivals and stuff, how does it feel that people are finally seeing this thing that you made and it's getting like really positive reactions from everyone?
I mean, it's terrifying. I yeah, when I wrote it, I gave myself this like mission to write something that as if my parents would never see it. Because if you kind of have your like imaginary parents over your shoulder, those are like placeholder, right? Metaphor. There, then it's like everything I'm creating, I'm sort of filtering through like how will they perceive it? And I think by like really trying to write something as if no one would ever see it. I was able to kind of go and explore aspects of my personal life and my sexual history and like interactions with men that I'm only just now realizing people are watching, and it's actually terrifying. Like it's a very like highly clenched experience. You know, like when we watched the premiere, I sat next to my parents and that was awful. Just because the whole time I'm thinking about my dad watching, you know, it's like it's a strange experience because it's sort of remained this like private personal project that no one really knew about, and now it's like out there, and it's also then like my laundry's kind of out there, so that's kind of horrifying. And you know, it's deeply vulnerable to write something that's so personal, to be in it and the director, and to feel like, oh God, I hope you like it. So, you know, I very much, you know, want people to like it. I want people to see me and see where I'm coming from, and that like sort of, you know, understand me to some extent. And also, you know, this, you know, the movie's about a girl who's cursed, and plot twist, you know, I think of the curse as like being a woman, being a person in late stage capitalism, being a minority, being an outsider, you know, whatever that experience is in society. It's sort of bigger than just this like magical idea of, oh, someone's hexed you. It's this concept of like, when you exist against so many obstacles, it just feels like you're cursed. But actually, what you're dealing with are like structural forms of oppression. And so it's like my hope is that that will land with people and that they'll resonate with that, because it's a shared struggle. And so, but it's terrifying. I mean, I feel like I think that like as an artist, you just like really only want hundreds. You just want to get A's on everything. So it feels good. It does feel good to feel like, okay, there's an audience and people are connecting with it, and people are seeing themselves in it, or they're able to like identify with what the core themes are. And it's also like, oh my God, please don't look at me. Yeah, that's how it feels. I don't know.
What would you say was the hardest challenge that came about, just any process of it?
Getting people on board was probably the hardest part. Um, the title was like a joke initially. I thought it was really funny and kind of like bold. And but I felt like, you know, the scenes were all so original and so absurd that, you know, I'm biased. I'm like, I read this and I think like, wow, this would be such a fun movie. And I just think like, I just thought that process of raising money, getting a producer on board, getting department heads on board, getting your cast on board would just be like, everyone reads it and it's just like, oh my God, yes, this would be so fun. Let's make it. And that like wasn't the experience at all. You know, we got a lot of, I think a lot of people were really freaked out by the material. I think people were like, you cannot call it this. Like, there's no way in hell you're going to have a movie with an expletive in the title. Like, are you kidding me? Um, and also, I wrote this 8 years ago. So, for context, you know, I was pitching the script before Euphoria existed, or Zola, or Pleasure. So, at the time, you know, I felt like what was being made was pretty safe and sanitized. So, but I also felt like, yeah, but like think about movies from the 70s and the 80s. They're so raunchy. There's so much sex. There's so much like crazy gonzo, wacky shit going on. Like it's not that crazy if you compare it to like a De Palma film or, a Ken Russell movie. Like we're just like carrying on the tradition of fun smut. So I think really getting people to see or believe in the bigger vision was the biggest struggle. And I think that just like unfortunately it being my first movie and it me being a woman, I think it just comes with a little bit of hesitancy and people have a hard time trusting I know what I'm doing. And I was an actor for many years, so I never directed a short. I never made something as like at the helm of a project, but I'd been on set. I'd been in a lot of theater. So I had a lot of experience sort of being on set or watching how the machine works, but I hadn't ever tried my hand at it. So I understand to some extent why there would be some like hesitancy around like, who is this bitch? Like, can she do this? Like, is she just a narcissist? She's the lead. Like, what is she doing? And honestly, the plan was not to like be writer, director, actor. The plan was just to write and act in it. And then we wanted to find a director. But when I met Tim, my producer, I met Tim and I met Francois, who plays the actor at the end of my film, on a short film. And the three of us, Tim was producing and Francois and I were acting in it. And the director of that project is one of my best friends. And on the set, I was like, Francois, will you read my script? You could be in it. And so he read it. And then at our wrap party, he was like, Tim, you should produce your movie and I'll help produce the movie. So we sort of formed this little group. And then at our first couple meetings, after our first couple meetings, Tim and Francois were both like, I think you need to direct the movie because I think you actually have it in your head. And figuring out how to find a director to attach that will have the same sensibility and the same tone and the same sort of references for aesthetic is going to be really challenging on our budget because it was a very tiny movie. So I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm an idiot. Like I didn't even go to film school. I barely went to college, and basically Tim and I worked for a long time on location scouting and just talking through the film and shot listing the movie and we did a lot of previs, a lot of like test shooting the movie and then like on a camcorder test shooting the movie with other people, with my cinematographer. And he got me all these books on cinematography and like lenses. And so because I had a lot of imposter syndrome, and now I sometimes just call imposter syndrome internalized misogyny, but at the time I just knew it as imposter syndrome. So that was like the biggest obstacle, I think, was not only believing in myself and then getting other people to believe in me as a sort of like with a holistic vision. Sorry, that was a long answer.
Oh, that was a great answer though.
Okay.
I was going to ask if the intention was always well, obviously you wrote it, but if the intention was always
Yeah.
to direct and star in it as well, and
Yeah.
that makes me like I
Yeah.
couldn't think of anyone else directing this because it feels so connected to you as well.
Yeah. And then at a certain point I felt old and I was like, I don't think I should act in it anymore because I'm old and I'm directing it now. But then at that point, Tim and my producers were like, we don't have the budget to put a different actor in here. Also, we don't know whoever we cast, how they'll feel about everything. Like the one positive of me being the lead and the director is that I will be there on set. I will always be available to shoot and I will always do what's ever in the scene and I won't be a diva. So, it sort of also became just like logistically and like budgetarily better for me to be in it and direct it because we knew that I would do it and I would be cheap. Like they had to pay me for SAG for the union, but then it's like my pay just went right back into the movie. So it was a win-win in that case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to ask because you brought it up before we started, but what is the connection to The Simpsons?
So I think of Trash Town. So the movie's set in this fictional city called Trash Town. And I think of Trash Town like Springfield, which is it's this like every America, every state, like everywhere's town. But the twist is that it's less this like sort of suburban American place, but it represents like this sort of forgotten, neglected small town of America that is overgrown with like green and ivy. That's like these broken down, um, closed factories that are abandoned, these oil refineries. There's these little diners and donut shops and sort of these old like homes. So for me, the idea of Trash Town was this collage of sort of neglected Americana. And I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, so it was also kind of like leaning more towards the South in America, where it's humid, where it's hot, it's sweaty, it's like, it has this sort of old American charm, but it's also kind of like sad and impoverished, but kind of like Springfield, where it's like, what state is it in? And it's like any state. I've driven around across the country, and any state will be in will hit just like a little town, and we'll always be like, oh, look, we're in Trash Town. It's just like this little spot. And I'm sure you have it too in where you live. There's just those like little areas that are like little podunk, nothing burger places with a dive bar and like a random strip club that's like poorly attended and like a little cute, diner, so it's kind of that sort of place. And then the other inspiration kind of from The Simpsons is this idea that they all have one costume. And even there's like a scene where she changes clothes, but it's like she changes into the same outfit. Where I was thinking of The Simpsons, where it's like you look in their closet and it's just like one Marge just has her green dress. It's like they have their uniform, their sort of cartoon uniform. So
Yeah.
those are my two like Simpsons references of like sort of cartoon imagination.
No, that's great because when watching it, I think within like the first little bit of it, I was kind of sat there and I was like, I've never been to America as well, but you kind of sit there like, where the fuck is this based on? But as you clock on, you're like, oh, like Trash Town feels less like a place and more of like a idea of like this is just a place that's everywhere generally, and
Yes.
wherever you go, you'll find it somewhere.
Yes, it's like this little pocket of a little area of town. Also, we did film it around New Orleans, but I really I didn't want to shoot anything that was iconically New Orleans, which is their like French Quarter, because I was like, that will tip people. Like, I wanted to keep it all very ambiguous, where it could be anywhere. But right when we were about to start filming, there was a hurricane in New Orleans and in Louisiana, and we had to push our whole shoot. But then we were like, you know what? Let's bring down Corey, my cinematographer, and let's just go shoot the post-hurricane stuff as like free production design for this like trash world, because it is this like, other than like the sort of tarps and things that would really give away natural disaster, it was like the weird bent over power lines or the weird like industry with like scrap metal, where we were able to just find these shots organically for free that like helped sort of build the world of this kind of like trash place. But it was really just this like post-hurricane uh rubble basically that we just shot. So that's like a trick, for filmmakers. If you don't have the budget to build like a Walking Dead set, just, shoot after a natural disaster.
With a title like Fucktoys, it's kind of provocative, and the story and style for it as well is something that I feel many mainstream filmmakers and studios would be stuff that they would typically avoid to try and be more safe. And
Yeah.
I'm curious if you feel that filmmakers and studios should actually go more into the direction of stuff like you're making and other filmmakers like Mike Cheslick for Hundreds of Beavers and Vera
Oh
Drew
my God. I'm friends with
Joker as
Mike.
well.
I
He,
love Mike.
he was how
Yeah.
I found out about your film
Oh,
because
really?
I think he shared something at one point, and
Yes.
immediately I was like, yeah, right. I'm I'll, I'll give it a look, and then
Actually, that was one of my questions for you. I was like, how did you even find out about this movie? Um, yes, I mean, I'm biased, right? Like, of course, I'm going to say, like, yes, studios should make movies like mine because then maybe they'll make one of my movies. But I know I can only speak to my experience as an audience member, and I think that, I kind of agree with Harmony Korine in his like recent interview where he's like, movies suck. I think that America and American cinema is kind of embarrassing right now. Like what we're churning out and giving Oscars to is kind of like, feels like a very low standard of imagination, of creativity, of pushing boundaries, of trying new things. I think that not only has America gotten really safe when it comes to the stories they'll tell, the formula for the stories they'll tell, the casting that they have, the way it's shot, how it all looks the same, it's all shot the same, the coverage looks the same. I also just think that the directors don't have a lot of vision. Like there's not a lot of new ideas coming forward. So it ends up feeling also like, you watch a movie and you're just like, I don't understand what is different about this director versus another director. I also think it's from this like Netflix streaming, I don't know what you call it. Like, I think everything on Netflix started looking like movies, and then movies started looking like TV. And so they all kind of look the same. And then the reaction I end up having to a lot of movies is that they feel like television movies. Like they just feel like kind of like a Hallmark TV movie or like an episode of something, but it's like a weird length. It doesn't feel like this is a movie. And I think that then it's cyclical, where then it means the movies that they're making aren't really that cinematic. They're kind of whatever. And then no one goes to the theater to see them. And I think if movies had more of this like visual style, visual language, sort of thinking outside the box in terms of structure, in terms of, the formula, you could say, for the storyline, I think people would go and see them in theaters. And then I think it would like revive that whole part of the machine. But I spoke with someone who works at a studio recently, and they were basically describing how the mandate that they have is like this: we need to make movies that are going to be popular in multiple countries. So if we want it to sell in Germany and England and the States and China, then they kind of have to like water everything down to make something average that's like non-offensive, but that will like averagely do well. And I think that then we're like, that's why we're in this like mid like world where we're like, yeah, the what we're making is just generally whatever.
yeah,
um, so I think though that it means that we're like ripe potentially for revolution in the sense, or a renaissance is maybe the more appropriate word, but I think that it's ripe for sort of like a fresh take. And I do think that it like trickles into like the festival world. I think that it trickles down into like indie film, because I also think, there are these like indie studios that don't feel so indie, right? Like, and I won't name any of them, but we can imagine who we're
we're
talking
both
about.
thinking of the same one, I think.
Yeah. And I even think that it like trickles into those studios, and then it trickles into like film festivals, where I also think the other thing that's happening is a lot of these companies are just like helping out their friends, or they're helping out their little boys club. But just like in other business that might work, if you like give your buddy a job, but you all work at like a finance company, or you work at like some kind of business. But I think in film, it's an art form, and just giving your buddy a movie, or giving your buddy financing for a movie, but he may be isn't a good filmmaker, and then it yields like a bad result, is just like a bad investment. But I think it's like very, very hard. Like I can just speak to our experience trying to make Fucktoys. Like it's very hard to be taken seriously as an artist if you don't have the clout that goes with it. If you're not like part of the cool kids club, if you're not like the daughter of so and so, I think there's so much of this like nepotism, but it's also like goes into like cliques, and I think so. I really identify as being very outsider. Mike, I think, is also very outsider, but I think that the benefit that we have is that if the product is good, audiences actually don't give a fuck about the clicks. Audiences are just there to see a good movie. So I'm trying to service them. Mike is very similar. Like, he really helped frame that for me at one point too, where he's like, look, it's all about your customer and giving them the product that they want. And so I do think that like if I think it would be really cool if some of these companies would sort of like look outside of just their like inner circle and maybe take a risk on up and coming filmmakers who have demonstrated that like not only do can they like tell an original story, have an authentic voice, but are also maybe able to like have an audience and make something cinematic. I don't know if I even answered the whole question, but that's my take. Yeah. It's kind of bleak. I think
Yeah.
it's sad. Also, there's so many filmmakers I know and they just can't get financing. And then you see a movie come out that's like getting panned and it's like got a 5 million, $8 million budget. And you're just kind of like, if you split that budget up, you could have made 4 movies for 2 million and they maybe would have been like cool, artistic, weird, Julian Donkey Boy movies, but we don't know because those people are never getting the platform. So I think there's also like kind of something kind of sad of like there's potentially a lot of incredible artists that will never know what they could have made because no one gave them that chance.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I got sorry.
I don't
No,
know if you feel the same way. I don't know.
Um, well, that's the thing. It's just like, we talk about it and it is true, but then you kind of sit there and you're like, well, this fucking sucks. Like, the whole thing, the whole situation is just like miserable. I'll give you my last question, which,
Okay. I'll be answered quickly. Sorry, I'm a
well,
talker.
I'm not complaining. The last question I have is a very simple question. Why should people see fuck toys?
Oh my gosh. Um, I don't know. I read this one and I was like, oh gosh, I don't know how to answer this question. I think if people, okay, I'll maybe say if you're interested in a good time, a fun adventure, a fun ride, then that's why you should see Fuck Toys. If you want to go on a fever dream journey, I do have this like dream that was like part of my intention with the movie, which is that I really wanted teenagers to like try weed for the first time and watch my movie or acid. But I can't officially say that maybe or can't provide the drugs for anyone. But I was like, I remember being a teenager and seeing some like really crazy movies that like broke open my brain that I was like, oh my God, cinema is this. And I really wanted my film to be that for young people that some like 16, 17, 18-year-old is like with their friends and they're like, "Oh my God, do you want to watch this crazy movie?" And they like put it on at 1 a.m. and everyone is stoned but having like a spiritual spiritual reaction. That would be my dream. But I think that why people should see it is also just to support, women telling women's stories, women telling, stories about being a sex worker, in this world and, women of color, if you want to see a brown girl as a sex icon, I think we're like due for more of that. So those would be my other reasons, but I don't know. Why do you think people should see the movie?
Uh, to fucking get high and watch it, of course. No, I agree with there's like a bunch of stuff that comes out every week and most of it sucks. So why not watch like and again, it's such a unique film in the sense like go out your comfort zone and go and watch this movie because like even if you walk away with it and you don't really know how you're gonna feel, you're gonna at least see something that you probably wouldn't have expected you would see in a cinema nowadays. So
Yeah.
and also because it's brilliant. But I got to throw that in there, but yeah, people should go and
Yeah.
fucking watch Fucktoys.
Yeah, and also like it's a comedy. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun. And it's supposed to be like a fun adventure movie that is irreverent and sexy and sentimental all at the same time, which is like me. So, which is like everyone.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing to have to try and like pitch your own movie and not sound like a total cringy idiot. Like, you know.
I love asking that question last because it's
Yeah.
someone's like, well, of course you go and see it. Is it the best film ever made? Or is someone being like, why would you ask me this?
I
Like,
know. Now I have to do this. Well, you're so lovely that, I'll try and answer any question you ask me.
thank you so much.
You get a grade at school for this?
No, this is just I
They
just
don't even know about it. They
no.
don't even know. You're about to make so much money on YouTube and they don't even know.
I wish. Thanks for making
Thank you.
movies.
Yeah, thank you for watching them and caring about them and giving a shit.
Of course. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my interview. Be sure to catch Fucktoys. It's doing a huge festival circuit right now, so be sure to check their website. I've got it linked down below in the description, so you can have a look and see if it's playing in a city near you. A big thank you as well to Annapurna for taking the time to sit and talk to me about movies and The Simpsons, and a huge thank you to Tim as well for helping set all this up, going back and forth despite our differing time zones. I really appreciate the time. If you take anything away from this interview, you should go and see this film. It's fantastic. Even if you don't like it, go out of your comfort zone and see something different. And also, most importantly, above all else, is support independent cinema. See ya.